Hi and welcome to Checking In at SEA. My name is Perry Cooper. We are going to be talking about FlyHealthy at SEA and what we've been talking about with our consultants from the medical field about the things we need to think about as more and more people start to come to the airport and get prepared for trips that we probably haven't taken for quite a while. We're going to be working with a doctor who is from Harborview Medical Center and the University of Washington to help us with some questions. In this segment, we're going to start off talking about TSA checkpoints and what we see different for folks as you start to arrive here to the checkpoint. So again, here with Dr. John Lynch from the Harborview Medical Center and the University of Washington. Dr. Lynch, this is something that people probably haven't seen for a while, of course, because they haven't traveled, a lot of folks, but it's a little bit different as well, too. We've got different types of separations. Can you talk to us about why that's important in really a meandering queuing situation here?
Yeah, I think this is a great point. There's actually a couple of things that you can see going on. One is sort of a structure that the Port of Seattle, Sea-Tac, has put together to separate out people. And so as you look back, you can see that there's no longer a queue that goes just elbow to elbow, meandering over to the TSA checkpoints, so creating some space side to side. And what we know is that probably one of the most important things we can do to prevent COVID transmission is separation, just spacing people out. And so simply making those queues, those lines a little bit farther apart is one of those key things that we want to look at. The other thing is what we're asking people to do, and you can see with the green circles on the ground, they were asking people to space out within those queues, away from each other. We know when we're all used to being in lines, that can be a little hard to do, but we got to just remember to use those little signals, those little cues to separate ourselves in line, and then use that space that the Sea-Tac has created to separate ourselves out from line to line.
So that separation of what we're doing then is like a lot of people were already used to different lines that we may be at stores or other places that 6 feet in front of you, 6 feet behind you. With this line, then we're actually closing every other lane as you go along to keep that spacing then as well too. And I know in the past some had thought making a long plexiglass corridor would be the best way, and that might be a good idea to do this, but we've learned that's not the best way to go, right?
Yeah, so I think we've learned a lot over the last year, and you'll see plexiglass in a lot of parts of being out and about, grocery stores and other places where customers and other stores are working together. But what we've learned is that sometimes, or actually most times, the virus that causes COVID-19 can easily move up and around these plexiglass barriers. And the other thing that's even more important is what we want is that air to be moving. So, we're going to be talking a lot about this today, I hope, but how we handle air, what's called ventilation within the buildings, is really important. And we don't want to create a lot of walls that prevent that movement of air around. What those things actually can do, if you build like a big corridor of plastic like you talked about, is actually trap air and not allow air to move and get refreshed or filtered.
So in a queuing situation, as people come up, this is probably one of the busiest spaces that you'll see at the airport when you come back, is people waiting in line for a checkpoint. This is actually a good thing to have this spaced out with folks because you've got the circulation that's happening without those blockings or the plexiglass
yeah, exactly. So
wall.
What you see like right in front of you is a layered approach. People wearing masks, people being spaced out by the queues, spaced out from person to person, and then within a big room where there's lots of air movement. And that air is coming in and out and being filtered before coming back in.
So in another space that can be very busy for folks as they come back to see us here at SEA is the satellite trains, because that's another situation where you're going to bring people together, and it's probably going to be a bit more uncomfortable maybe for folks who aren't familiar with it. You're going to see people come together. What are some of the thoughts that you think people need to have as they approach a satellite train situation where there may be more people?
Yeah, no, this is a great question, because I, as a traveler coming through Sea-Tac many times over my life, I know how much I want to rush onto that train, right? And we want to get on the fastest one there. And I'd say there's a few things at play that can really help us there. One is you can wait. Don't go into a train that's completely full, elbow to elbow. Just give people a little bit of space. The next train's going to be there in a matter of minutes. So generally hopefully we're not cutting it that close. The second thing is you actually go and look at the way air is handled in those trains. It's being moved through the trains quite frequently, and they've added additional filtration units. So that air is not only moving better, but it's also getting filtered more than it was in the past, and a pretty high level, something on akin to what you see might be in a hospital or a hospital room. And also just behind that, every time those doors open and close, it's a new, fresh bolus of air, a big bundle of air that comes in and out. And so all that air movement and a little bit of spacing, which we're going to ask people to, take some responsibility for, we're going to see, I think we're going to have a pretty safe circumstance.
So the big whoosh of air you see when the doors, actually a good thing. We want to see it.
More air, what we call ventilation, is probably one of the most important things we've learned this year. We spent early on, we talked a lot about touching things and washing our hands, which are still really, really important. And what I'd say is that is less of a major factor in COVID-19 transmission. And what we really should be spending a lot of time focusing on is air, ventilation, in addition to all the other things we're doing. The hand washing, the masking, the distancing, and how we handle air everywhere in our society.
It's that multiple levels that we've been talking
Multiple
about.
levels, yep.
Excellent. Great. Well, we appreciate it, Dr. Lynch. Thank you again for our setup. Continue to watch us for our checking in and Fly Healthy at SEA setup and healthy videos that we've got going on. We'll have more coming to you as well. Thanks for joining us.